2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9. It says, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. So before we get into the verse, we have to understand who is writing it and why. It's the Apostle Paul, and here's what is remarkable about the verse, right? Paul isn't writing this from a comfortable place. He's not in a corner office. He's not on a retreat. He is writing from the middle of one of the most turbulent seasons of his ministry, right? So let's go deeper than that, because the history here is everything. Paul is writing to the church at Corinth, and Corinth is not an easy crowd for Paul. This is his second letter to them. So the first letter, it did not go very well. There was tension, there was division, there were people questioning his authority, people saying he wasn't a real apostle. So some smooth talking preachers have rolled into the church after Paul left and basically said, Paul, he's not that impressive. His letters are bold, but he's weak. And when you're actually in the room with him, he's not all that. So Paul is writing 2 Corinthians, defending his ministry, not because he's insecure, but because the gospel itself is at stake. And in chapter 4, he's explaining this is what the ministry costs. This is why it is still worth it. Now, what Paul had actually been through by this point, this isn't a hypothetical suffering for Paul. By the time he writes this letter, Paul has already been beaten with rods, whipped with 39 lashes, stoned and left for dead, shipwrecked, and imprisoned. He was even driven out of city after city, and he wasn't writing from theory, he was writing from scars. And here's the detail that hits different. The Greek word that Paul uses when he says hard press, it literally means to be squeezed like grapes in a wine press. He's not using a casual word. He's using the language of someone who knows what it feels like to have everything closing in on you from every side. So when Paul speaks, he has earned every single word. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but we are not destroyed. So watch this. Paul doesn't list his problems. He sets up 4 contrasts. 4 times he says, but not. And that is intentional. That's theological. That's him drawing a line in the sand, hard pressed, but not crushed. The pressure is real. It's on every side, but there is a difference between being squeezed and being shattered. You've been in seasons where it felt like the walls were closing in, and yet you're still here. That's not luck. That's the hand of God creating a margin where none should have existed. You've been perplexed, but you're not in despair. The Greek word for perplexed, it means no way out, no clear path, right? No obvious answer. But the word for despair, it means absolutely no way out. So Paul is saying, I could not see a way, but God kept me from the edge. There is a difference between confusion and collapse. Persecuted, but not abandoned. This one is personal because when people walk away, when the church questions you, when the support dries up, when you are misunderstood, the enemy wants you to feel forsaken. But Paul says, I've been chased, I've been rejected, but I never have been forsaken. God did not leave. Struck down, but not destroyed. This is resurrection language right here, like you were knocked flat. Maybe you've been knocked flat recently, but you were not destroyed. There is a version of you that gets back up, not because you're just strong, but because of what lives inside of you and it cannot be killed. So right before this verse, in verse 7, Paul gives us an answer. He says, but we have the treasures in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. So jars of clay in Paul's day were common, cheap, and fragile, right? They were the everyday container people used for everything. They could crack, they could break. But Paul says that's exactly the point. God put the treasure, the glory, the gospel, the resurrection power inside something breakable. Amen? On purpose. So that when you survive what should have broken you, nobody gives you the credit. The power is God's. You are the jar of clay. You were never supposed to carry this alone. You were never supposed to be unbreakable. The fact that you are still standing, that is not you. That is what is inside of you. All right, so leave me some good notes in the comments.